Welcome, beloveds. My name is Reverend Ellie Hutchison. I want to welcome you all to Nurture the Soul. I am the minister, and this is Brioche, my puppy, who is joining us today, whether I wanted her to be here or not, but welcome to everyone. I am the minister for our congregational and community engagement with the Faith Info team, and we are a part of the Love of Church at the national setting of the United Church of Christ. I use they, them pronouns, and today have a blonde pixie haircut and wearing a snow white sweatshirt with black clay design dangly earrings made by a local artist in Tucson, Arizona. Nurture the Soul is a weekly webinar that provides our local churches and faith practitioners with a multitude of practical, educational, and innovative and formational resources in which to engage with the critical topics of our time and to center the care and the education for the people of God. From cultural and community organizing to congregational leadership, from worship and theology to resourcing our small and rural churches, and from the ministry of our youth and children to a wide range of justice issues. Beloveds, we are gifted with the presence of guest artists, authors, pastors, theologians, historians, biblical scholars, and key thought leaders. Nurture the Soul is a space to where we can stay current with how the gospel is alive at this time. We hope that this virtual space is not only a space for connection and community, but also to plant those seeds of curiosity, because we believe in the collective movement towards the world that God imagines for all of us happens in so many ways. We invite you to join us every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Nurture the Soul. And from time to time, you'll notice that we've had some special offerings that happen on Mondays at 3:30 p.m. Of course, you can find a whole full list of all of our webinars, even beyond Nurture the Soul, and any of our other upcoming digital program offerings at www.ucc.org or on any of our social media platforms. And beloveds, if these conversations move you today, if what you hear nurtures your soul or enhances your ministry or even your community organizing, we hope that you consider donating towards the annual fund of the United Church of Christ. And you can do that by texting the letters UCC to the numbers 41444. It is your prayerful and financial support that helps programs like this continue to do the essential work of the United Church of Christ. And before I introduce this week's guest, I'd like to remind you that we have two features at the bottom of your screen. One is the chat feature. It is a dialogue bubble towards the bottom left of your screen. It has 3 dots in the middle of it. We invite you to not only use this to let us know where you're zooming in from right now, but also to communicate with each other, or if something resonates with you that you hear today, to give that space into chat. We also have the Q&A feature, and we will be visiting with our panelists post their presentations to engage in this Q&A. And that button is at the bottom of your screen to the right. It is also a dialogue bubble with a question mark in the middle of it. And so we invite you to use that Q&A feature at any time during the webinar, as much as something comes up. If it has been answered, we won't repeat it again, but we invite you not just to wait until the end. And if by chance any of your questions do not get answered or addressed today, you're more than welcome to email me at my email address, which we'll put into chat, and I'd be happy to find the connections for the people who might be able to help resource your own ministry. Today, beloveds, we are joined by some people that are doing some just absolutely great and amazing pastoral work in their regions, caring for our neighbors who are migrating to the United States and even beyond. And today we're going to hear from personal accounts about what has really been happening at the border, and then what we might be able to anticipate or expect in the upcoming days, weeks, months, and years. The first presenter to join us today is Reverend Randy, who is from Arizona. He will be sharing stories about the impacts of the wall in the pristine desert, along with some of the collaborations and resistance that he has witnessed to. Reverend Ali is joining us from the Rio Grande area and is working about bringing other faith communities into the care work and that she is leading there. And she'll also share what they are witness to in Texas. And then finally, Reverend Noel, who is in California, but is our partner with the Church World Services and will be providing a larger oversight in what it is that we are seeing and what to anticipate. And so at this time, I want to invite Reverend Randy onto the screen. Thank you for joining us, Randy. You're so far away from me. If any of you don't know, I also it's an honor and a privilege to work next to Randy Mayer at the Good Shepherd UCC in Sahuarita, Arizona. And so he is just down the hall right now. But Randy, I turn it over to you to get you to share your screen and talk what are we seeing at the border in Arizona?
All right. Well, it is good to be with you all. And let me see if I can get my slides up. Yes, I bring you greetings from the Sonoran Desert, the historic land of the Tohono O'odham and the Pasquayaqui. The desert is absolutely gorgeous, and the areas that we do a lot of work are very, very rugged, mountainous, canyon areas, and this is one of the pictures of we arrive. Lately, we've been coming down to the border we arrive around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning down there. We're loading things up and leaving around 4. Let's see if I can, is this going to move ahead? We've created some different camps out along the border where the asylum seekers are crossing. A year ago, we were welcoming 400 to 500 people some days out there along the border. And with President Biden's asylum ban, that's really diminished the numbers of folks that are crossing out in the desert. And most of those people are actually getting deported. So we say that President Biden actually put in force an asylum ban, and it has been heartbreaking to see. This is some of the work that we do out there, just welcoming people, giving them food, giving them a place to be safe. Right now, it's actually pretty cold out there in the morning, and most of these folks are traveling from usually warmer places, and they've never been in such cold weather. So we are out there giving food and water, coffee, hot chocolate. Many of the folks have not eaten for days, if not weeks. And so it's really important for us to be there to give them a welcome. I always say, welcome to the United States. We are really glad you are here. You are going to make our country better. We make burritos, and as you can see, people are just coming from all over the world right now as they cross. Families from Mexico. This family here is from Cuba. People from Africa and the Middle East. The world is really coming apart it seems, and they're looking for places where they can be safe and where they might have a chance to live. These folks were from India, lots of Indian folks from Nepal, and just all over the place. We do interact at some level with the Border Patrol. They actually come out to our camp. That's where they come and pick people up. Usually they're there around 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they come back at 2, and then once again in the evening. They load people up and take them to the station, and here they are. They usually get everybody to line up so they can count and make sure they can get a van or a few vehicles out there to pick people up. And so they load them up and take them in to process them in a small town named Sasabe. Um, we give them, we're really just trying to make the the folks that are crossing help. We have lots of. It used to be we only needed to know Spanish. Now French, Urdu, Hindi, all sorts of different languages. We actually have kind of what's going to be happening in on a printout that we can give them so that in various languages. Um, and here they are. They're scared, but hopefully they've had at least the initial encounter with a few folks in the United States that are going to help them feel like they're welcome and that they're treated with dignity. In this same area, we also have a lot of interactions with the cartel. They are, many of them are waiting to lead groups that are going to be walking through the desert. And so even though we don't like having the interaction with the cartel, it's just the reality of the type of work we're doing. This is at the end of the wall. There's no wall for about 10 miles here, and that's where everybody is crossing. The cartel has uh, blow torches that they use to cut the wall. The wall does not stop the cartel at all. It's very easy for them to cross people in places. And so this section right here is probably going to be there, that mountain right out there. You can see the Trump went out of office and they were not able to complete that. Biden stopped the wall there, but it looks like that's going to be all sealed off, which is really, this is incredibly sensitive habitat for animals and for vegetation. The cartel is literally standing there taking pictures of everybody that they are crossing so that they can send the money back to their like for these folks from India, they would actually send the money, send the picture back to the folks in, they would send the picture back to the folks in India. India smuggler would sell the money into the cartel's bank account. We talked with the cartel there. They don't like us taking pictures of them out there, but at any rate, this is a group of folks that are going to be crossing into the United States. Our sole purpose is to stop deaths. We do not want to have, this area has been just hundreds of thousands of deaths. And so by giving people food, water, a life straw so they can drink filtered water in the desert is really important. Um, and what we're seeing right now is that the people that are crossing on a Tuesday will be deported in Mexico on Wednesday or Thursday if they're Mexican citizens. And so here's some of the folks that are getting deported. I didn't take a lot of these pictures. Some of them aren't necessarily in Nogales. But it is absolutely heartbreaking to see these families crossing. They're being deported back into Mexico. They've escaped the violence, the terror that has pushed them out of their homes, and now they're back in a country where they don't feel safe and they have nowhere to go. In fact, some of the families that we're seeing, last week it happened. Family crossed on a Tuesday. They were deported on Wednesday, and they were crossing back into the United States in the desert on Friday. They had no other options. And for them, they said it's better that we sit in detention than to go back into Mexico where we have no home, we have no place to go. So that's the sort of reality that we're facing now. And what we have created over the last number of years is a deportation machine. I know Trump has talked a lot about deporting people, millions of people. But Biden's been deporting a heck of a lot of people. Here are a group from over in the Rio Grande Valley, Witness on the Border there's a guy that tracks all of the deportation flights, and it's astounding how many just in the last 12 months. This report was given at the end of October. There were 7,689 deportation flights, ICE flights. Some of those are internal, getting people to detention centers, but many of them are the international flights. There's also many deportation flights. The United States has given lots of money to Panama to deport people, to Colombia to deport people. So the border is no longer on the U.S.-Mexican border. It's further down in the border of Guatemala and Mexico, Panama, Colombia, and beyond. These are all the flights that over the last 4 years. Just thousands and thousands of flights. This is a very expensive process to deport people. And you can see by the numbers there. We also have the CBP One app. The CBP One app is probably going to go out of existence. I think Biden is going to be phasing it out this next month. It's the preferred way the Biden administration wanted people to come through the ports of entry. They could apply for an appointment on an app called the CBP One app. We have a shelter in Mexico that we work very closely with, a Casa de la Misericordia de Todas las Naciones. And it's a shelter really geared around families. We usually have 130 people at the shelter. Many of them are children. It's a safe place. There's a school. This is Sister Lika talking to Andrea Cano, who is a member of Ainsworth UCC in Oregon. But there's lots of activities that the folks can do there. The tortilla. We have a tortilleria there. Actually, I was down there today. They give me the tortillas that I use then out in the desert to make burritos for the migrants. But they also are able to sell the tortillas. And the final shot is of a mime down there at La Casa, imagining a world, and you can see by the faces of the kids, they can imagine a world where all can be treated with dignity, where all can prosper and live in a safe world. And that's the world that we are working on as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Really, really appreciate that. And now I would love to, and we'll definitely, I see a question into chat. We'll have some time to review those questions here at the end. But now I would like to invite Reverend Ali into the screen here, into the virtual world, to share a little bit about what you are seeing and expectations and all of that stuff in the Rio Grande Valley.
Thank you, and I appreciate the invitation, and I am certainly in agreement with a lot of the things that Reverend Randy shared about his region. Some of the things that I notice more different in our region is there has been a diminishing amount of people coming into the region. So most of the people are coming in through the CBP One app that Randy just mentioned, waiting in Mexico for several months, sometimes even a year or more, and then coming into the U.S., continuing the process towards their final destination, which, you know, it's the safest way to come in if they don't have to go through the desert or the river. In our case, the river is the most common area of crossing. In the other part that we are seeing different in the state of Texas is that the state attorney general has been suing all of the nonprofit agencies in our region who have been helping and assisting in the process of people coming into the United States and providing food or shelter or other support, life-giving measure to continue their journey into the United States. So it's been several in our region, some of the most known, Team Brownsville, and even Catholic Charities have been sued multiple times. They haven't been successful, but still it's a constant taking resources from what they're doing and concerns and fears and all of that brings that. Of course, we live in the region of majority Latino communities where many of our homes are mixed status, where you can have children who are U.S. citizenships and parents and grandparents who are not. So there have been a lot of reaching out from these families that lived, I guess, quietly in their own world that now are kind of asking for help, looking for resources. So we are trying to connect them with the resources that we have and we know. And then on a final, or two final notes, is the surgence that we have seen the past, 10 years of anti-immigrant sentiment in our own community, and how it has changed the dynamics of our work and how we do our work. And it will continue to, I guess, change as we try to see how this new immigration approach happens. In the positive note that I have observed the most, and I'm excited about in the midst of all the other concerns and fears that our community are experiencing, is that for the first time I have heard from other pastors and churches that have never in the past been involved in the work of supporting the migrant community. And my joy and my hope is that we can now form a stronger, more collaborative pastors and churches willing to put ourselves in the service of our community in the most needed and most fragile situations that I'm concerned that we will face. So in a positive note, yeah, we are all trying to concentrate on that and finding ways to support each other, to collaborate, and to move forward into whatever we are about to experience. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm finding that because you all are so deeply embedded in the work, that you are giving your presentations quickly because you're used to having to give them quickly. And I want to thank you, Ellie, for ending on a positive note there. I really appreciate that. Reverend Noel, very curious if you can make yourself present and share with us, what are you seeing, and yeah, just how do we move forward? What's next?
Hi, everybody. So Reverend Ellie already introduced me, and one of my roles at Church World Service actually is working since I'm ordained UCC, and actually Randy Mayer was my mentor and helped me get ordained, and worked under him just like Ellie does now. And there's a common thread, and so have that perspective working on the border now, along with Randy and Linda, and Ali is also part of the UCC National Collaborative on Immigration. I help serve to coordinate that group. And so I'll do a plug at the end that I would definitely, I think anybody who wants to sign up to be part of the UCC National Collaborative on Immigration, it would be very much I think your interest in getting more involved on this issue, getting more educated, having more information. And right now it is very difficult time, as we all know, with the incoming Trump administration and the overwhelming anti-immigrant sentiment that is not new. And we've already seen some of the implications as described about the Biden policies. So let me jump in and see if I can share my screen here. And then I need to get to the view, but or the slide deck version of it. Go. Okay, so what do we expect to see? We already heard a lot from Reverend Mayer about what we potentially will see. I should note that Church World Service is also a refugee resettlement organization. So I'll speak a little bit about the impacts on the refugee program, and that's the entity that the UCC collaborates with around refugee issues. So, there's been a lot of confusion about what the president can actually do. And I think we all know our civics on this call, but it's important to perhaps remind others, right? The president doesn't make laws. The president signs laws, right? And the executive branch can implement or administer pieces, so they can write rules, and we'll see a lot of they can do executive orders. We'll see a lot of those things coming down the pike, but much of what the president-elect Trump is saying would be contrary to current law, and they would be sued because it would be seen as unconstitutional, and that it's very I'll go into more of that as we go here. So we already heard a little bit about asylum, and unfortunately the CBP1 app being phased out. We're probably going to see the return of Remain in Mexico, and that will mean more people at risk in Mexico and unable to claim asylum. We'll see increased political pressure for Mexico to receive more deportees, often not even from Mexico. And I wanted to a coalition that we're a part of is the Welcome with Dignity, and they have great resources and advocacy asks and messaging. But definitely worried about seeing this shutdown really of the asylum program, and the result meaning more deaths in the desert, more people crossing without being able to claim asylum, and of course higher numbers of deportations back to unsafe conditions. Refugee resettlement, we're going to continue to mobilize to try to save and protect the refugee program, but we will see an attempt to pause and potentially slash numbers of refugees. In fact, we expect this administration to try to zero out the refugee program. Last fiscal year in 2023, we were able to resettle 100,000 people, which is pretty incredible. The most in recent history. And, we do expect to see more refugees resettled in this fiscal year, but what we'll be fighting is seeing, how much will the next administration say they need to put resources at the border and pause the refugee program. They might try to pause it indefinitely, which of course would be contrary to our current laws. So the big worry that I think is really in the news right now is the mass deportations. And though it seems pretty disingenuous to try to use the Foreign Enemies Act, and that they hopefully, according to depending on the courts, would not get away with that. But National Guard, on the other hand, would not be that far of a stretch. So we could see National Guard being utilized to try to do mass deportations. Tom Homan, the incoming border czar, has said that they should expect workplace raids. We know that they will rescind humanitarian parole, which is pretty easy for them to do on day one, as well as the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan program, which has actually brought in hundred thousands of people on humanitarian parole. And we'll see that being shut down. Now, it is difficult to rescind temporary protected status because that is embedded in our congressional or laws made by Congress, but they can let it expire. And usually it expires around 18 months after it's been extended. So that is a real problem. There's, I think, around 600,000 people on TPS, including lots of Haitians, Salvadorans, Hondurans, Venezuelans, etc. So, and then in terms of the DHS priorities on enforcement, which the Department of Homeland Security, which are quite a bit more lenient towards people who have been here, who have family here, who are working. We're going to see that being rescinded and them trying to deport every single person they can. We know that they'll start calling people in for ICE check-ins who have stays of removal, which are like a deferred action status. And we've heard that they're going to try to, anybody who might be deportable, who's currently being incarcerated, they'll start there. It is very difficult to sort of go into communities and round up people, as they like to paint the picture. And so there is a question, about how much is rhetoric, how much can they actually do, and it's hard to parse out, what is talk and what will be action. And we want to be preparing as much as we can for all of the above. The UCC is an immigrant welcoming denomination. We have an immigrant welcoming congregational model, and we hope that you will check out that toolkit after this webinar, because that has a lot of resources, and maybe you can, if you're not already, become an immigrant welcoming congregation or a sanctuary congregation. So I'm getting lots of questions about sanctuary. Over the years, I've played a role in national coordination across faiths and congregations in nationally around the sanctuary movement. And so here are just 5 things to know. And this is Alex Garcia, who was at a UCC congregation, Maplewood UCC, and near St. Louis. And that's him with his letter from ICE that he wouldn't be deported. Well, we know that is not going to be the case, that they're going to be going after people like Alex. So I think everyone here hopefully has an idea of what a sanctuary congregation is. Somebody willing to engage in a spectrum of activities that solidarity actions about welcoming immigrants regardless of their status, advocating to help stop deportations, assisting with legal clinics, accompaniment, and physically sheltering an immigrant in the danger of immediate deportation. So we are planning to relaunch the sanctuary movement again in this re-election. It will look different than it has in the past. Of course, adjusting to the context. We're updating the sanctuary pledge. We might see less public sanctuary cases, in terms of, we don't want people to get stuck in sanctuary like they did last time, where there was, unfortunately, people there who 3 or 4 years in sanctuary, and that's not really tenable for a family, for a congregation. So we are needing to ask the Biden administration to take action now. So some of the things that the Biden administration can do before they leave office is really critical to build resilience for the next 4 years. That includes expanding TPS, temporary protected status. It includes trying to strengthen the the refugee program, and some of this is up to Congress. Again, now Congress holds the purse strings, remember. So the funding bill that's coming up, the continuing resolution it's called, is December 20th. So they have to pass a new continuing resolution, a budget, by December 20th. And so we want to have less money for ICE and CBP and deportations. And we want to have more money for programs that welcome refugees, like the refugee program, like the SSP, which is the shelter service program. So you can find out more in these links here, and we'll send out this presentation afterwards. There's action alerts. The other big piece is the know your rights, the preparedness and the rapid response, being willing to open our congregations for if there are community raids or workplace raids. So making sure that we are passing on the right information to people about so that they can know their rights. And then getting to have those resources and going through those resources, getting educated. Some of these resources are a little outdated, and some of them are currently being updated as we speak, but they're still very pertinent to what we expect coming down the pike. Accompaniment, you and your congregation can do the important accompaniment work. And that picture is Terry, an Indonesian asylum seeker who had been denied his asylum case, been targeted because he came from a Muslim majority country. We were able to get him out of deportation proceedings twice, and this is Pastor Sandra Ponto in the picture, holding the picture, and she is pastor of Maranatha Indonesian Fellowship. It's a UCC congregation. She's ordained UCC, and she has helped thousands of asylum seekers from the Indonesian communities get their cases adjusted. And so that accompaniment work is really critical. The direct action, the rallying, and even risk of arrest, those will be important actions that we can all be part of. And this is a picture of General said it in 2019 when we risked arrest in front of the ICE office. And I'm sure now that the situation is different, we'll be planning an action in front of the ICE office in the Kansas City General Senate. Additional resources and sign up. Please, again, go look at what does it mean to become an immigrant welcoming congregation, and look at those sanctuary toolkits to see if you want to be a sanctuary congregation, and sign up to be part of the UCC National Collaborative on Immigration. So again, thank you for being part of this webinar, and thank you to Reverend Randy, Reverend Ali, who are on the ground in the borderlands doing such incredible work, and also to, of course, Reverend Ellie, who made this webinar possible and also does incredible ministry.
Thank you so much, Noel. I invite you to stay on camera, and I invite Ali and Randy to join us on camera as well. Wow. They're, like really, we just spent less than a half hour really just exploring very tip of the iceberg kind of things that that you all are seeing and experiencing at the border. And so I'm curious. I want to ask a personal question, and then I want to turn it over to the Q&As that were there. There's just so much information to intake. So how do you advise people who have been in this work for a while to stay grounded, and or people who are going to be new to this work to become engaged and not feel overwhelmed? I want to start there. And all don't unmute yourself at once, but you can go in any order.
I think as any work that requires a lot of heart and spirit work can become quickly overwhelming if we don't tend to those, right? And I think the best advice as anyone can give, I think, is put your oxygen mask on first, and then we can help the rest. If we are not well, if we are not cared, and we are not grounded, we cannot do the work. And I think one of the ways that we do that is going back to whatever it is that fills our soul, making sure that, yes, there's going to be a lot of work, and there's going to feel like there can't be a moment to rest. but we have to make the time to rest, to be able to continue the next day. If not, we just gotta not do it.
Yeah, I think that's very good. The other pieces that I would add is that you don't do this work alone. It has to be done in community. You have to have others that are working together with you to make something sustainable. The other piece that I've been really focusing on, because I know everything seems so overwhelming, is how can we focus on just helping locally? How do you do the best work locally that you can? And then even a smaller way is, how do I help? If I can just help one person today with their challenges, their immigration challenges, or um, you know, it really is, we gotta stay really focused on maybe some of the small things that lead to bigger things. Because if we think of all the horrible things that are going to be happening out there, um, it's going to be overwhelming and we're going to be paralyzed. But if we can focus locally, and then if that wave of focusing locally, and maybe just focusing, if everybody focuses on one or two people for that day, it really can be sustainable. And it really can make a difference, especially for those folks that we're seeing face to face. That's how we get through this moment, is just struggling one day at a time.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add to the piece that Randy started, which is the relationships, that it's all rooted in relationships, and that also strengthens us to keep going. And so, starting with your own congregation, but also the ecumenical interfaith relationships are super important. Relationships with impacted leaders, uh, you know, rooting ourselves in the realities that and stories that impacted leaders are willing to share with our congregations, and the relationships that are built through the accompaniment work. And that in those relationships, there is also time that we build to, celebrate the small wins, small victories, and to have evaluation and understand where we might come up short. I think there is times where, especially if we come from a more privileged background, where we really have to check our own privilege and be willing to shift away from a sort of white savior model that some of us might carry through our faith traditions, and try to really think about what is the collaborative model, what is the ways in which we work together and can really center ourselves around what impacted people are going through, and the accompaniment piece. And then I think, part of that being in relationship and being in community goes back to what Ali said, where we find time to take care of ourselves, but we also find time to uh, sort of restore and renew in community as well. Uh, and this is something I'm personally struggling with right now, which is the overwhelming sense of January 20th coming quite quickly, and how our lives will change after inauguration. And I think that right now, we need to be preparing and planning and strategizing, just like we are on this call, and that will really help us be in a better spot when we really need to be.
Yeah, and Noel, can you just help clarify again what accompaniment might mean for people who are in the webinar that haven't done that work before?
Yeah, and I think Randy also explained some of that, but really walking alongside those who, in this case, what we're talking about is walking alongside people who might not have a documentation status, for example. Um, I mentioned the case of Terry and how his pastor Sandra accompanied him. So that's an example, helping try to get somebody out of detention, helping somebody get legal resources, helping, sometimes asylum seekers find housing or clothing or case management. And the legal service component a lot of time is very important. So helping people find low bono, and that may include putting some money forward as a congregation. We have congregations that are even paying rent for people for a certain amount of time until they're able to get work permits. So there really is a broad spectrum of different accompaniment activities and actions. And also it could mean direct action and risking arrest in this next administration.
I love that. Yeah, no, thank you. There was a question put into the Q&A, and I think you did tap on it a little bit, and we will be sharing some resources out. But folks are wondering about offering sanctuary in the new administration. Is there anyone who could provide a webinar, basic info, or be a resource person? So I can answer that and say there are definitely resources that we'll be sending out, correct, Noel?
Yeah, so the resources that I shared in this webinar are pertinent, and we are updating those. I think probably the premise of this question was around, is ICE going to go into a church? And we don't know that for certain. What we do know is right now there's a DHS protected areas on that's a guidance, a memo, a policy from DHS. Previously, we expect the Trump administration to probably rescind that, and then it would likely go revert back to the old sensitive locations memo from ICE that goes back to 2011. And that is, we think, I mean, nobody knows for sure, right? But the Trump administration didn't touch it last time. We don't know, but we're going to be watching carefully, right? Because that will be an indicator if they rescind that as well. I think that churches will still remain sanctuaries, but that is also one of the things we have to watch out for, though, as well, as sort of the right-wing extremism. And we've seen that immigrant churches or mosques or Hindu temples are often more targeted by vandalism from right-wing extremism. So the security pieces are all things we'll have to be looking at. But that's as brief as I can make it for right now, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Noel. And just to also help answer that question, we will I and some others, collaborators, the Faith Info team will be coming out with a training series in February of this year, February, March, where we'll be talking a little bit about the history of sanctuary churches, because all of us have different eyes and awarenesses and blind spots to where, yes, the sanctuary movement at the beginning was this, but this is what we need in our time. So how do we continue to build, maybe see what worked and bring it along, what didn't work and fill it in with something new? So we will have a training series. So make sure you sign up with UCC Digest News, which comes out every Tuesday. Information will be shared there for sure. I really love another question that we had into the Q&A is, are there any safe houses, other agencies that act like an underground railroad from decades ago in the event of deportation, and especially for those attending and with our affiliated or are affiliated with our churches, specifically within our ministry settings here.
Well, I mean, I think I would encourage people to go back and read the ACLU legal FAQ, which is also in the presentation we can send out. And that helps answer some of these questions, because I do think it's important for people to know, what is in the harboring laws and educate ourselves around that. There's always been a type of underground component to the sanctuary movement work. And there's always a debate within activists and movement leaders about, how much do we lift that up in a prophetic way, and to what degree is it to protect those that we're trying to serve. The protection networks remain in their own right, something that is, relative to the person in need and what their needs are. We try to protect their privacy.
Thank you. And for Randy and Allie, if folks are interested in doing some of that accompany work as an intro, and thank you, Noel, for that. Accompany work as an intro of like, how do we get started? What does it look like? Because for me, I'm an in-person, in-process learner, which means I have to see it being done in order to know how to replicate it. How would folks get engaged? What do you think are the best ways? Let's say somebody lives in the middle of our country, not near a border, so to say, but want to get engaged in the work.
I'll say something and then Allie can have a try at it. And I think this is a situation that, we're both here along the border. But, I think it really is, how do we, there's literally people, refugees, migrants, asylum seekers in everybody's community now. And so and this is for churches, how do we have to learn how to be able to find the people in need in our communities. We kind of live in isolation, and we don't know how to, our churches are just isolated, and we don't know how to connect with people that are really in need and understand how, so that's the accompaniment journey is, finding yourself in places where you can begin to build relationships with people is really what it becomes. Do we only have relationships with people that are like us, or believe the same as we do? How do we break down some of those barriers for ourselves? Because it really becomes about trust. If you don't have the relationships, it's very hard to have trust in somebody trying to accompany, and it takes a lot of risk to find yourself in those places. And so that's my challenge for churches is the border is in all of our communities now. How are you going to find that border and learn how to cross it, and how do you do it in a way that is sincere, authentic, and also builds trust and builds a relationship. So, because there's going to be people living underground in all of our communities, and every church really should have a couple families that they're accompanying and walking with, and because once you break that, then you'll find that there's just lots and lots and lots of people that you can accompany. So that's my thinking around it. Ali can add to that or go off in a whole different direction.
No, I would say I will add to that, right? We have to start where we are because not everyone we understand, not everyone has the access to get on a plane and get to the border, but yet all of us have access to a community down the street that are actively engaged in some sort of support system for migrant communities. If you have already gained access to that support and you want to gain more knowledge of how is it functioning on this side of the border and bring that into community of how can we partner and make this better, then come down to Randy or I and observe, right? And that's something I always want to try to make sure that we understand. Mission work has changed. We used to pack and come and say, we are going to go help these people. It was always the idea. Now the challenge is coming with the idea of learning from what's happening. And I think that's one of the keys that we are to expand into. And finally is don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are people who are already doing the work. We just have to connect with those who are already doing it and ask, how can we support? Put ourselves and our churches at their service rather than to start something new. Because the more people continue to start something new, the more difficult it becomes because it waters down the effort, I think. So if we can work together, I think that will be helpful.
Yeah, that is brilliant by both of you all. Thank you so very much. And, you know, I also tend to lean on the know your history. If you know the Underground Railroad worked, go read all of the books. Buy from a local bookstore or your library, support your local libraries, all of the books about the Underground Railroad. And then all of the organizations that have stemmed from that, right? And not just in the United States, but if we look cross-nationally, I know that Randy and I have had conversations about how liberation theology really helped to not only prepare us for our ministry work, but also to prepare us for our community accompaniment or our organizing work, using womanist, feminist theology. There are books out there, and I don't want to lean on the side of just get prepared, but buy all the books because we may not have any of those books available to be able to do that from. And then I invite you to be curious, right? I think while we continue to recognize who we are culturally, whether that be our sexual or gender, sexual preferences or gender identity or religious practices, or even our political leanings, our religious understandings, be curious and know that, recognize where your privilege is. Come in with, you know, just as we are witness to Jesus coming in every situation, literally every situation, and just being with the people first, and then doing the work after, right? And so I invite us to remember those spaces as much as possible. Randy and Ali, there are not enough words to just thank you for your witness, for the things that you experience physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of that stuff in all of the days leading up to today, and then moving forward. And so I hope that you remember that you have people that you may not ever have met that are saying, I love you, and are grateful to each of you. And Noel, that goes for you as well. You know, you've been in this work for so long. And I think that, you know, somebody in perhaps my position or even your position where we have this like 360 view of what's happening, sometimes you can get caught up in that. and you're still doing the really, really important work. So I want to thank you as well for your work. And beloveds, you tuned in, you care, you asked brilliant questions, you shared beautiful things in the comments section. I just want to say thank you. And thank you for all that it is that you are and have done with the Nurture the Soul, what it is that you're doing in your communities. You're asking the right questions, and that is a really wonderful place to be. Well, we are off next week. Finally, I know my marketing and communications team, I just really want to extend my gratitude to them for making sure that all of the webinars that you've seen this fall, they are the ones who make it happen. And I cannot thank them enough. But we are back for a special offering on Monday, December 2nd, where we have an ecumenical gathering for prayer and action for World AIDS Day, which happens to be the day before, that Sunday, December 1st. Act up and fight back to end AIDS. This year, the United Nations AIDS Organization invites us to observe World AIDS Day with the theme of Take the Rights Plan or Path, with an emphasis on protecting human rights for people who are living with HIV and AIDS. This year, the United Church of Christ, the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, and the Metropolitan Community Churches are collaborating to bring this very special ecumenical prayer vigil and call to action, where we will hear from personal accounts and stories, reflections, prayers, songs. We get invited into this space by our denominational leaders, the Reverend Dr. Karen Georgia Thompson, Bishop Yvette Flunder, and Reverend Elder Cecilia Eggleston, who will talk about the human rights of people who are living with HIV and AIDS globally. And we look forward to seeing you at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on that day. Again, Noel, Randy, Ali, thank you so much for being here with us. For those who have joined us virtually, please share this webinar. And the follow-up email that you will get with these resources, with everybody that you think is ready to do this work. And I just may offer one piece of advice before I turn it over to Reverend Ali is, remember, beloveds, the revolution will not be televised. Remember to protect the rights of the people that you're advocating for. Amen. Reverend Ali, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to end today with the Farmer's Worker, prayer, which was written by Cesar Chavez, one of the fighters of rights for immigrants and farmers. It says, "Show me the suffering of the most miserable, so I will know my people's plight. Free me to pray for others, for you are present in every person. Help me take responsibility for my own life so that I can be free at last. Grant me the courage to serve others, for in service there's true life. Give me honesty and patience so that I can work with other workers. Bring forth song and celebration so that the Spirit will be alive among us. Let the Spirit flourish and grow so that we will never be tired of the struggle. Let us remember those who have died for justice, for they have given us life. Help us love even those who hate us, so we can change the world. Amen."
Siblings in Christ, if you are moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.